Hello, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Eva and I love all things makeup and skincare, everything from luxury to budget dollar store, indie brands, everything in between. Now, today's video, we are going to be swatching, reviewing, wearing, testing out the new Givenchy Prisme Libre Loose Powder Blushes. Now, these are new, but I put air quotes because they've existed previously, but it appears they did a relaunch where these are now available at Sephora more widely, and there are now 6 shades. So a little bit more about this launch. These retail for $43, and they are a loose powder blush that is compartmentalized into like 4 different shades. I'm doing my best to show you without spilling powder all over my desk. So they are divided up into 4 different colors, and you are meant to tap out the product, mix it all together, and then wear it as a blush. Quickly going over the product claims, reading from the Givenchy website. It says the ultra finely milled weightless texture of a blush blends into the skin, diffusing color for a natural second skin finish, or build the powder on the cheeks for a more intense payoff. They allegedly wear for 12 hours and they effortlessly illuminate and sculpt the cheeks. Now these come in 6 shades. I picked up 4 of the 6 shades. I lucked out because these are listed as online only on the Sephora app, but I was in New York City for work last week and stumbled into a Sephora one evening, and they had these products. They didn't have like the whole display set out, but they had some testers out, and then I was able to like sneak into the drawer below and grab the shades I wanted. Let's go over the shades I picked up. So the first shade I picked up is shade number 1, Mousseline Lilas, and the description is light pink and lilac combined for a cool toned breath of freshness. So this is very much like a cool toned pink blush akin to the like viral Dior blush. And then I also picked up shade number 2, Taffetas Rosé. And this is a harmony of vivid pinks. So these are all pink shades, similar to number 1, but these ones have a little bit more of like a rose undertone, so to speak. So not quite as cool toned or bright as number 1. The next shade I picked up is number 4, Organza Sienne, and the description is bright red and burnt sienna enliven the skin with a brown tone harmony. I was very excited about this because I love a brown blush. It is my favorite blush shade ever, are brown, kind of like tawny, taupey blushes. So really excited about this one. The final shade I picked up is shade number 3. I'm kind of going out of order, and this is Voile Corail, and this is described as coral and orange tones impart a healthy looking glow. So this one has 4 different shades of coral. I want to go through all of the shades and show you arm swatches before we get into the application. Going from shade 1 through 4, first up we have that Lilas shade, and this is what the product looks like on the puff. I am going to also be inserting arm swatches, but because of the nature of this product and it being more diffused, it's going to be a little bit hard to see them on my arm. So the puff is definitely the best way to get an idea of the coloring. So again, this is shade number 1, Lilas. Next up, we have shade number 2, which is Taffetas Rosé. And this is what the product looks like on the puff. It is more of a neutral pink. The third shade we have is that Corail shade. This is what shade number 3 looks like on the puff. Really, really pretty bright coral. And then that final shade I picked up is shade number 4, Organza Sienne, which is that like brick red meets tawny brown. And this is what the product looks like on the puff. Here we have our arm swatches, so going from shade number 1 to shade number 4. So we have that Lilas shade, Rosé, Corail, and that Organza Sienne. You'll notice that these two shades are quite similar, and I would say they're really difficult to pick up on camera because they are so subtle. This was me building up the product, so just keep that in mind. My first impressions when swatching the product is that it is a little bit messy. Like, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't like bringing me back to, I used to love the Bare Minerals, like loose mineral blushes. It wasn't that messy. It wasn't as messy as that. Something about, I think, like the puff and the container made it a little bit more contained, but I'm like looking down and I do have some of the blush powder on my pants. So keep that in mind. Like, this is not going to be the quickest blush application because you have to tap it out and then use a little puff, etc. As far as the initial shades, absolutely loving them swatched out on my arm. Those first two shades, shade 1 and 2, are very subtle on my arm and when they're swatched, but what matters is what they look like on the face. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply shade number 1 to one side of my face, and then we'll do shade number 2 on the other side. I'm not going to swatch all of them on my face today just because I don't have time to reapply my makeup between every shade, but I do feel like shades 3 and 4 showed up really well on my arm, so you can get a really good idea of what those shades look like. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the actual application, starting out with shade number 1, that Lilas shade. Again, I'm going to apply it as originally intended. I'm going to use the puff and hopefully that works, but if not, then we will use a brush. So we have the product in the lid, and I'm just going to swirl, and then we are going to pat on the cheeks. Oh wow, that's really pretty. Oh, whoa, okay, this is way more pigmented than I thought it would be. Holy moly, okay. Ooh. Okay, that is very, very pigmented. I am so surprised by how pigmented that is. That is very pigmented and very pretty. I'm going to apply shade number 2 on the other cheek, and then I'm going to blend everything with a brush, but I don't want to diffuse it yet because I want you to be able to compare shade number 1 with shade number 2. Okay, so shade number 2, the Rosé shade, tapping out and just putting my cute little puff. Shade number 2, and okay, yep, this is a powdery mess. It's getting all over my mirror, my desk. Okay, I definitely underestimated how pigmented this product was because I applied way too much. I am looking at shade 1 and shade 2 in my mirror, and they are very, I mean, there are subtle differences. Like, this shade number 1 is much more cool toned than shade number 2, but they are very, very similar. Like, I would not advise getting both of them unless you are a crazy person like me who needs like every single nuance and absolute tiny little shade in the world. But if you are an average normal makeup collector, you do not need both of these. You only need one of them. Let's now blend this out to make it more wearable. Let's go in with the 37 brush from Refer and just start blending the product out. My biggest advice from the get-go is less is more with this product. I would apply just a little bit and then build as needed, as opposed to doing what I did and just like piling it up at once. It is blending nicely though, I will say. Okay, we have shade number 1 mostly blended. And clean the brush off on a microfiber. Okay, now we gotta blend out shade number 2. Here are the two shades blended out. Once blended out, I'm not noticing any difference between shade number 1 and shade number 2. If looking at the footage back, I notice something, I'll put a comment on the screen, but from my perspective in this moment, these shades look nearly identical on the face. So again, you definitely don't need both shades 1 and shade 2. Overall, I'm liking the way the blush looks. Like, very honest first impression in this moment. I'm not blown away. It's a pretty blush. It was like kind of fun to apply, but it was also kind of a pain to apply. I'm looking at my desk, in my mirror, in my pants, and there is powder everywhere. So definitely keep that in mind if you are thinking of picking these up. Very pretty. I don't quite know if they're worth the hassle, is my initial impression. I am going to continue to test these out, and I am going to also be wearing shades 3 and 4, which I would say from a swatch perspective are the two I'm most excited about. So I will be testing those out as well, and then when I finally do my next favorites video, I will make a note in the favorites video on what I thought about those other shades, if they ended up being a favorite or more of a flop. But wrapping up the first impression, I would say they're pretty, but they are a bit of a hassle. They're a bit messy, and I'm not blown away by shades 1 or shade 2. Like, color-wise, it's not doing anything amazing. I'm not like gasping and freaking out like I often do with a blush. So right now it's just like a tepid, like, meh, it's okay. I'm not angry at it, but I'm not saying you do need to rush and get these by any means. This is clearly the year of blushes. I think brands are just trying to find any way now to try to innovate in the category, and most brands by now have already done powder, cream, liquid, stick blushes. So I am curious to see if like the loose powder blush is going to be the next trend. I kind of hope not, because it's messy and kind of a pain. That brings us to the end of our video. If you do decide to pick these up, I would really appreciate if you shop my affiliate link down below. It really does help support my channel. And if you are not already, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much, and I will catch you in my next video.